What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fitness Stuff for Normal People podcast. I'm Marianna, here as always with Tony, and it is no secret the fitness industry sucks, period. Whether it's the corrupt multi-billion-dollar supplement and weight loss industry or the endless supply of influencers promoting anything to drive page views. The bottom line is we're not trying to provide just another fitness podcast, but completely change the fitness industry for the better by providing you with the knowledge and tools to give you confidence in applying the best possible training and nutrition into your own life. And today is part 2 of the top 10 scams in the fitness industry. Tony was just saying, I think we're more excited about part 2.
I'm so freaking pumped up. I got like energy pent up in me.
I know, I'm ready for it. What is a scam? A scam is defined as simply a dishonest scheme being wrongful or deceitful with intent to result in financial or personal gain. This industry is absolutely full of them. And we went ahead and ranked our top 10 to break down with science, not only so you can fully understand these concepts, but actually give you solutions on how these actually work and maybe give you some more practical information. If you haven't listened to part 1, make sure you go do so. You don't really have to listen to them in a specific order though, so you can listen to this one first, but definitely recommend it. Also, before we get into it, if you haven't already, you can leave us a 5-star review on any platform that you're listening. If you're on Spotify, make sure to give us a follow. This is one of the best ways you can support us so we can continue to reach more and more people. And you'll also get notifications, I think, every time
it pops up on your home screen every time we pop in like an episode. Once you open Spotify, it'll be like, oh, your favorite podcast just posted a new episode.
Yeah. So you never miss out.
I think it's the coolest thing to look at. I'm addicted to checking it like every Monday as I wake up. But anywho, we love the questions you guys ask after each episode comes out, especially after this last one. We've gotten so much positive feedback. I think that's what made me even more excited about doing part 2, because these scams get real scammy. But a lot of the time, the questions you guys do ask require a lot more detailed and thorough answers that we can't answer just on social media, because your health is not so simple. And that's why we made this sick feature over on the premium side of our Fitness Stuff podcast for just $5 a month, where we do a bonus episode every single Friday, doing an Ask Me Anything style episode, responding to your actual questions and drawing them out. For example, last week, we just broke down, that was actually a fun, more training focused one, breaking down full body training splits, the benefits to their recovery, strength, and different aspects of incorporating that into your routine, along with exercise choice on how to know actually which exercises you should be putting into your program and why you would as well. And we do those every single Friday. It's just $5. And on top of that, we got a ton of stuff going into there as well, like a $300 monthly Legion supplement giveaway just for being a member or asking more questions. We're going to put the sign up to that in the show notes down below. Speaking of that big giveaway for Legion, shout out to them. Sponsors since day one. Our homies, the real ones. We mentioned this last week, but I think it deserves another one. They're dropping some big flavors when it comes to protein. Banana bread, bro, apple pie, and blueberry muffin. I know they had some sick products coming out even last month with their vitamin D and K and magnesium, which I've been shouting about for freaking months. They dropped them. They got new flavors. As always, you can get 20% off your first order or double points after that using the code FSPOD or FSPOD at checkout. And we're going to put those in our show notes down below as well. Now, before we jump into the episode talking about these scams, shout out again. Strong Inside, the company that we've been working with for a while now, and they align with us pretty dang well, because if there's one thing we do not shut up about on this podcast, it's protein. Right? Because whatever your goal is, whether it's trying to get leaned out for summertime or build some big muscle, protein is going to be at the center of your nutritional goal.
And one of our most commonly asked questions, without a doubt, is which type of protein should I choose? Because this can be complicated. There's a lot out there. But we are partnering with the Strong Inside, which is an educational resource, not trying to sell you anything, to help you learn more about proteins from milk, specifically whey protein. And I'm sure you all know by now, because we've said it a lot, but whey protein is a protein derived from milk and tested as the highest quality form of protein. That's because it's a complete protein, meaning it contains all 9 essential amino acids and is absorbed more quickly than other types of proteins. It's found not just in your basic whey protein powder, but also added to protein bars and shakes. You can just look for whey protein concentrate, or whey protein isolate on labels, all which deliver a high protein content.
We freaking love them. And today, more people are looking at the science and taking a more evidence-based approach and finding their best protein. And I think the hard part is figuring out how much you need as an individual, because guess what? You're different than the person next to you and the person next to them. So the Strong Inside made a sick calculator either on the stronginside.com or in our show notes down below to help you find your individualized number. And the big giveaway that we were talking about, that massive Peloton tread package, we picked a winner. I want you to keep an eye out on your emails if you did submit your 5 entries that you got through the Strong Inside, because they emailed the winner all the details to go. We're going to announce that name later this week, probably after it's claimed, and we make sure everyone's got it. Head over there. Everything important's down the show notes. I can't freaking wait. I'm stumbling over my words. Let's talk about these scams. I'm so
I think I need more caffeine. I don't know.
I don't. I need less. I think I overdid it.
I'm back in my iced coffee kick because it's warm out now, and I forgot how much I love iced coffee. It's my first summer with an espresso, so.
Oh, that's a dangerous game. When I first got an espresso, I did the same thing as I learned how to make like the perfect iced coffee, which now
they have iced coffee pods, which I just got. Yeah. So they have iced coffee, guys, if you have an espresso. So you can run the hot iced coffee over ice. I typically wait so it doesn't get watered down, but it's meant to be run over ice because when it melts, it actually enhances the coffee flavor. So it's pretty bitter without ice. Oh. When it's over ice, it is perfect because having a little bit more water in it makes it taste a little bit better versus tasting watered down. So.
I need to get this because I never knew that. I just would always have it and be like, you know what? Half the ice is going to freaking melt anyways. It's going to be kind of watery. Yeah. I didn't know that existed. Yo, my new one, I love Topo Chico, the mineral water. And I forget this. It was this trip down memory lane when I was living in Atlanta a few years ago, and I actually started Bloom training, everything. It was the infant little baby stages. I went to this coffee shop every day to get work done, and they had a Topo Chico tonic. And I've never seen it anywhere else, but I make them now at home with my Nespresso, where you do a shot of espresso over ice, and then you top it off with Topo Chico. And I'm not going to lie, the first time you taste it, it kind of tastes like you want to spit it right out. It's bad. It's bad. And then you keep drinking it and you kind of get semi-addicted to it. It's nuts. And but FYI, Nespresso is not a sponsor of this podcast. We just love them. We're just talking about it.
I wish they would sponsor me.
That'd be sick. Give me some free Nespresso. But today we're finishing off the list, right? So last week we went into and started off the list, and we decided to make it 2 different episodes because they were going to take some freaking time, right? We did top 10. So last week we did 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. This weekend, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And I think last week, it's like the order, I don't know about you, but the order to me, it wasn't as solid where it's like, okay, this could really belong anywhere. The top 5 here, I think, are where we get heated. I'm not going to lie, I don't know about you, but writing the outline for some of these, I was like kind of like breathing a little short, like my breathing shortened a little bit. I was feeling myself like a little more tense. I was actually feeling some malice coming towards these top 5.
Tony is nicer than me, so it gives us a nice balance here. He keeps me level-headed. But for you to say you're getting heated, it's real.
It just made me realize, because I knew all of these were what we'd consider a massive scam, right? Taking advantage of people just for personal benefit, personal gain. But when I started putting more and more detail together around them, it only made me realize how much bigger of a scam it was. I thought the more detail I'd have, the less of a scam I think it was, but it was the opposite. And that's what got me. I was like, dude, you've got to be kidding me. Like, how are these allowed to exist? Did you feel that at all too?
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why, I feel that often when on TikTok, like I used to talk about the same thing over and over again because you just see so much of the same thing. And I don't do that anymore because it makes me mad. Like, it's just not good energy to keep because unfortunately, you can't change the people who constantly talk about it, but hopefully you could change a perception of someone who's looking for a perception change.
Yeah. New boxing gym opened up down the street from where I live. So I'm like, maybe I should just invest in it's like $160 for a monthly membership. I'm like, do I want to do that just to go?
I'm honestly not surprised.
Hurt my wrist hitting a bag because I don't know how to punch, I don't think, but we'll see how it is. Now, last week as a review, if you haven't listened to it, I really do recommend it. I don't care if it's in whatever order. That was a great episode last week. We've gotten a ton of positive feedback. So thank you to everyone who reached out. Last week, we covered the first 5, right? 10 down through 6 with starting off with any supplement or routine that claims to heal your gut, quote unquote, heal your gut, right? Where we talked through all of that. We talked about testosterone booster supplements and hormone supplements or hormone balancing supplements. we talked about food sensitivity tests. That was a fun one last week for me. I know you broke it down really well, but food sensitivity tests. Then we went into fat burning workout supplements or products like Lumen, the 12-3-30 workout, fat burning supplements, and finished off with BCAAs. And we're like, okay, that's a good list, but here we go into the bottom 5. Which was your favorite last week, by the way? Did you have a favorite?
I think the food sensitivity tests. Yeah.
I think that was mine too. I always love talking about BCAAs, but I learned a lot about food sensitivity tests last week. I think my mouth was like just open like half the time you were talking, which is funny. But let's get going on top 5. And maybe we'll have a new favorite by the end of this. I have a strange feeling, though, that we're going to have the same favorite from this one. Now, starting off with number 5, and just as a preface, I like this one a lot. I think it highlights really what you can get away with in marketing in the supplement industry. And then the top 4, we're going to have to take some like deep breaths in between to get us going. But number 5 is going to be supplements that are specifically marketed for women. Specifically marketed for women. And I want to start off by saying, I'm not saying women don't have different needs from a vitamin and mineral point of view than men do, right? Every individual is going to have different needs based on their diet, their lifestyle. Like women commonly need more vitamins and minerals and different qualities compared to men. Like iron and folate would be a good example, right? Where women typically need a higher amount coming through their diet than men do, right? That's not what we're talking about here today. We're talking about specific supplements that are literally just rebranded pink. Like every single supplement, like a whey protein for women, a BCAA for women, a creatine for women. That's what we're talking about, where it's the same exact product. And it's almost hilarious when putting these together, some of the different marketing techniques these used. Have you heard of the brand Women's Best?
Yes.
Criminal offense. Criminal offense. These guys killed me when I broke it down. So here's why and what you can really get away with in marketing supplements. Women's Best had quite a few, starting off with the Shape Body Protein Shake, right? The Shape Body Protein Shake. So essentially, what a lot of companies realize they can do, and this is a page out of every single textbook on how to market a supplement, right? Find a specific insecurity that your target population has. Then promote your supplement as the cure to that insecurity. Right? If it's weight loss, if it's bloating, if it's any of this, some of the women's ones are going to crack you up a little bit. So this Shape Body Shape Protein, which is essentially a blend of whey concentrate and whey isolate protein. So not a very high quality protein supplement to begin with, but it's got about 230 calories, 20 grams of protein. It's got 4 grams of fiber, which they really tout as their prebiotic cure to gut health. And it really just comes from corn dextrin, right? It's not like a source like Olipop, which has like 7 different forms of prebiotic fiber from different roots, plants, which is usually going to be a little bit better, but 4 grams from corn dextrin. And they added L-carnitine for a little extra fat loss. But the claims on their website were that this is going to help prevent binges. It's a meal
How is that
replacement.
legal?
It helps prevent binges. It provides you with the nutrients that your body needs. And the recommended intake is to completely replace 2 meals per day with this shake, which is 230 calories. And the recommendation is that your third meal is around 500 calories, i.e., your daily intake should be around 950 calories. And it's going to slim your waist, lean you, and it's going to tone your core and abs while also building your glutes. Wow, it can do both of those at the same time.
This is magical. Wow.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's a whey protein shake. That's what it is. But you can notice what all the other whey protein shakes market as. It can help you build muscle. It can do this. But when it's for women, it's to help prevent binges. It's to replace meals through the day. It's to tone your glutes and core. It's the same exact product. It's just marketed differently. And it is $50 for a low quality protein supplement. The ones that crack me up even more, another one from that great company, their BCAA product. But wait, their packaging is pink. It's the same BCAA supplement you could find on Amazon, which we know in the last episode, BCAAs on their own are a scam product. They are $40, where what you could find on Amazon for $20, the same exact product, but it's not pink. That's the only difference. It's not pink. My favorite, have you heard of Peach Perfect creatine? It was viral for like a minute on TikTok because they were sending it to a lot of influencers. They emailed me once too. Have you heard of that before?
No.
It's got a little peach on it too, and it's pink. Peach Perfect creatine for women booty gains is the product name on their site. It is anywhere, and this is because it's being resold and things like that, anywhere from $50 to $70 for 30 servings of 5 grams of creatine. And for those of you guys who don't know, it's plain creatine monohydrate, where for bulk supplements, the brand that I recommend, it's on Amazon, same exact product. You get 100 servings for $14. 100 servings for $14, but this one's got a peach on it. It's going to help you build a booty. Same exact product. It is almost $70 for 30 servings. It's like their marketing is this creatine will build you a booty and make you slim out in tone.
Unfortunately, women, I don't like to speak for all of us, but this isn't new in terms of paying more. It's the pink tax is what it's called. Our razors are more expensive. Any body care, any hair care, soap, all more expensive.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to hygiene, that is where you see some of the most drastic differences in products for men and women. It's a lot more expensive, and it's crazy. You have the same razor and one is pink and one is blue and one
I'm going to use that more. I've never heard pink tax before.
Yeah, that's it. The pink tax. Google it. It's crazy.
I know it's true. I saw it with especially with women's razors, where it's like you just buy the Harry's Razor Club for men or whatever, because you get like twice as many razors for half the cost.
Yeah, I do. I buy men's razors. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's hilarious, but it's even more so I think this shines a light on really what you can get away with in marketing. Is you can take the same creatine product and you can say it's going to help you build a booty and tone your core and abs, even though it's the same exact product, and you can almost quadruple the price and cut the servings in thirds and get away with it, because it's just another angle at marketing. And I think that's what people, hopefully now by listening to our podcast, start to realize is the supplement industry. It's really just a game of marketing. Who can market the best? Whoever's got the best marketing team. It's ridiculous. They prey on binging, gut health, weight loss, and toning on the same freaking products. So that was scam number 5, where I don't think we have to spend too much more time on it, but I think that's a massive scam because it's literally deceiving people to make a profit. That's all it is rebranding the same profit, turning it pink, changing the names and claims on the bottles. That's it.
Yeah. This is not completely related, but the whole gut health thing. How often are you seeing men on social media complain about being bloated? Yes, men get bloated. Everyone gets bloated. But the whole gut health industry and marketing, that is predominantly women, because women are so obsessed with having a flat stomach, and companies know that. They're not marketed, anti-bloat supplements are not marketed towards men.
No, because it wouldn't work. No one would buy it. We'd be like, I really don't care. But that's what it is in the supplement industry. It is find a specific insecurity for your target population, market your product to cure that insecurity. That's all it is. And that's what this is a perfect example of. And that's why I thought it deserved a spot in the top 5. The creatine one cracks me up. Actually, they had such a nice offer when they emailed me. They're like, we will send you 1 free bottle of 30 servings of our peach if you make a TikTok post about this. I'm like, oh my God, you guys would send me a free bottle? And then I actually put it on my story, and the next few stories I proceeded to explain how much of a scam it was while tagging them. That was funny. And then got blocked. That was fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So that was a quick one, but here we go. Dude, these top 4 bring some freaking heat. Bring some heat.
I'm excited about them because I feel like it challenges you a bit. I think, at least I hope this is what it challenges. A lot of preconceived notions and things that people just believe to be true without further questioning.
Big time.
So
yeah, I think you're right. A lot of people, they don't know that the first 6 that we covered were scams where they could explain to you why it's a scam. But I think more people accept that, okay, BCAAs, yeah, those are overhyped. Okay, women's supplements, okay, those are overhyped. All the stuff that we went over last week, I think people understand that more. These top 4, I think you're exactly right. I think this is going to challenge a lot of people's preconceived notions. Yeah. Dude, number 4 is going to hit. So I want you to take the lead on this. Number 4.
Number 4, we're going in on organic labeling, which might hurt some souls. I know. You're paying $2 more for organic tomatoes, and it's not taking you anywhere. I'm sorry.
People are
Not even
passionate
$2
about
more.
this.
I feel like that was lenient. Yeah. So I feel very strongly about this one. But first, let's break down organic versus conventional foods, because it's really important to understand the difference, because a lot of people think organic, they think healthy, and there's no further questioning. These are healthy. These have no chemicals. These
Yeah.
are better for you. There's this impression that organic food is grown without chemicals. That's completely false. All farmers, both organic and conventional, use both chemical and non-chemical containment methods. Organic regulations were designed to promote the use of natural chemicals over synthetic ones. Natural, I say very loosely in air quotes. Over 100 fertilizers and inputs, this could be pesticides, insecticides, fungicides, are authorized by organic farming regulations in the US and Europe. So just because they are natural versus synthetic, them being natural has no difference when it comes to the reason why you're putting this in your mouth. How is this going to affect me from a health standpoint? Is this safer to eat? No difference between a natural chemical and synthetic one. It's just the source. Organic farmers have gotten approval from the USDA to use dozens of synthetic chemicals. So that kind of surpasses that piece there. They also use synthetic chemicals. So you can't even make the argument, even if you want to, that synthetic is just significantly worse, because guess what? Organic also uses them.
Yeah. That blew my mind, because that's the biggest argument is when I know I showed this out on something on my Instagram, and that was the number one thing is, are you kidding me? You're promoting non-organic. You would put those chemicals in your body. I'm like, organic and non-organic, that's not a difference between does it have chemicals or not. That's not the conversation. Yes. And that shocks a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's also important to note that organic foods, that they have been permitted to use non-synthetic pesticides, which aren't natural. This is different from natural, non-synthetic. However, these are non-synthetic pesticides are less effective than synthetic pesticides and are used in much higher quantities. So a lot of the times you will see a lot more pesticide use on these organic crops because they're trying to preserve them. They're trying to protect them and grow them. It's also something that people don't really.
Yeah, like you still have to kill all the bugs, all the insects, everything that you would normally have to. It's just not as strong. So, hey, let's use 50x more of it. Makes sense. It's like the kitchen cleaner when I decided to go organic kitchen cleaner from Whole Foods. And it's like, oh, I have to use half the freaking bottle just to get a couple stains off my kitchen table instead of the other, like OxyClean.
And it's just so crazy to me how people will also make the argument that we use all these pesticides in the US and nobody uses them in Europe. That's not true. There's different names, there's different regulations, but if there was no pest containment methods, we would have a really big issue with hunger across all different socioeconomic statuses in US, in Europe, wherever. This is where I get heated, because it is so insensitive of someone to go out and say that conventional foods are harming your health and that they're toxic or what have you, because people without any conventional produce, the majority of people cannot afford these organic crop fruits and veggies. They can't even afford the conventional ones. Yeah. And when there's absolutely no difference, and how do you think, I mean, when we're talking about exports to other countries and exports to third world countries, do you know how much the US has control over that and does a lot of that to feed these third world countries, if at all? So if there was no containment methods, we wouldn't be able to do that. No country would be able to do that. So that just pisses me off.
That's a huge point, because it's like, it's not like we just, if that was the case, if you could just grow like in Europe, the magic land, where you could just grow these crops without any insects, anything that would get in the way. It's like, well, does that mean the US is just spraying them to spray them for fun? If we could just grow them without all of this.
The argument is, well, you can grow more, profit, whatever. Yeah, you can grow more. And yeah, we can feed more people with it. Anyway, so when it comes to our health, organic versus inorganic has quite literally no difference. The nutritional quality of food in organic foods is not different from conventional foods. This systematic review published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, one of the most comprehensive meta-analyses to date of existing studies comparing organic and conventional foods. They did not find strong evidence that organic foods are more nutritious or carry fewer health risks than conventional alternatives. Though consumption of organic foods can reduce the risk of pesticide exposure. Now, people will take that one sentence there and think that that has any relation to health. Yes, it can reduce the risk of pesticide exposure, period. There's no, and that makes it healthier. No. It's just pesticide exposure. And it depends on the type of foods. That's not a conclusion. It's just an observation.
Well, pesticide's like a scary word. So do you think, is that why people, it's like they hear pesticide exposure and they're like, that has to be bad. I don't know, but that can't be good. That's probably what they're just thinking, right?
So, and there's no difference from a health standpoint. What can be really harmful to your health is not eating any fruits and vegetables at all. And when you look at products that just are packaged processed food that are organic, I mean, that is, I think, one of the bigger scams, especially if you think that buying the organic knockoff version of Cheez-Its is just going to be healthier than the Cheez-Its in the package. You're just getting scammed into paying more money.
We did a whole episode on this one too, which is a huge one, I think, to recommend to go listen to if you're really shocked by this and want more detail too. But I think when Whole Foods started becoming a thing, that was massive, where it's like, oh, my pizza's organic, AKA it's good for me. Ha 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 ha, hee hee ha. I can have 3 slices and be okay. It's that health halo effect that you talked about so much in that other one, where it's like, oh, it's organic, AKA it's healthy. That is not the same thing. The one thing that blew my mind when you were breaking it down the first time in that episode is, who was it? It was that Secretary of Agriculture when the US was actually forming organic labeling. And the fact that he blatantly came out and said, as the US was designing organic labeling, it's not a statement about food safety, nor is organic a value of judgment about the nutrition or quality of the food. That's not even why it was made in the first place, but that's what people think it is. They think it's the quality and everything. And that blows my mind, because that's where it started.
And you'll see a lot of farmers. I love when farmers really come out and speak about it, because it was really meant for this to improve safety standards for farmers. Because when you look at any study across the board showing pesticide exposure in humans in harmful health outcomes, it is people who work in farms all day, 7 days a week, who are chronically exposed to pesticides, breathing them in every single day. That is the human data that is scary, that is available. I'm saying in quotation marks.
Yeah.
Of course, these people who are, especially if you're not practicing proper safety standards, but even so, just working on a farm every single day around the clock, being exposed to this inhalation, down the road, that's going to have some repercussions to your health. So that's another point, that a lot of these people will extrapolate data from those studies from farmers.
Yeah.
Which that is important for farmers to think about, and the safety of their job.
But when it gets to consumer, I mean, we're talking about parts per million that these are measured in, to where it's like, is there a pesticide there on both organic and non-organic? Yeah. But it's such an insignificantly small micro amount that's like, what the heck is going on? And here's what I want to get your take on. Because again, I made a video where I just briefly was like, organic labeling versus non-organic. It's a scam. It's BS. And the one thing that people pound in is this idea of the dirty dozen. Heard of that one, right? The dirty dozen. Which is what? It's supposed to be 12 foods that you should especially buy organic, that you really got to look out for. These 12 foods specifically. What is that
about? Okay, so the Dirty Dozen. This was made by the Environmental Working Group, and for some reason it is still around today, and people are really adamant about it and really worried about it. So let me tell you why you should absolutely ignore the Dirty Dozen list. And if anything, tell your neighbors, tell people you know that this is one of the biggest scams, and there is nothing that you should worry about. You should worry about the people creating this list. Because every year, a group of scientists that make up the Pesticide Data Program take samples from fruit and vegetable crops and determine the amount of chemical pesticide residues present. The Environmental Protection Agency, this is not to be confused with the Environmental Working Group, but they take this data and do a risk assessment to ensure that any pesticide residue found in foods remains at safe levels, because these pesticides are studied and for their toxic amounts. And the recommended amounts that can be added are so far below that level. So that's what they're looking for. So for each chemical pesticide, there's an established tolerance level, which is the amount at which you can add each chemical pesticide to crops without it causing any health risk. And each year, this data shows us that fruit and vegetable pesticide levels are so far below this tolerance level established by the EPA. So far, in fact, that you would have to have 635 servings of strawberries before you started to see a negative health effect from the pesticides. 635 servings of strawberries.
So not even 635 strawberries, but servings of, so you would be eating wheelbarrows of strawberries before, and that's before it starts to become a concern. Not like it's like you've crossed the edge, you can't come back. It starts to become a concern. 635 servings, because strawberries are number one on the Dirty Dozen list, aren't they?
Yeah. With that background, let's go back to the Environmental Working Group that creates this Dirty Dozen. They manipulate this data when making the Dirty Dozen list. They do zero testing on pesticide concentrations, zero. And they ignore the data provided by the EPA, completely ignore it, but just include a few points so that it becomes somewhat relevant, right? They don't take into account the amount of each individual pesticide, so the concentration of pesticide. They base their ranking solely on the number of different types of pesticides added to fruit and vegetable crops. So different types, not amount of each. Let me give you an example. Say strawberries had 10 different types. You have no idea how much of each, but because a banana only has 5 different types, it's going to be below it. It's going to be safer. But the banana could have a much higher concentration of these different types. But they won't take that into account because they do not measure it and they do not look at the data provided by the EPA. Hopefully that clicked for a second. They don't rank them on pesticide concentration levels, just the different types, and they completely fail to account for the fact that organic foods also contain pesticides. So they do no evaluation, don't even consider organic crops at all, don't even mention it, do not even talk about the fact that they include pesticides on organic foods.
Well, I'm even thinking now, organic might have a higher number of pesticides on them because they have to use those guidelines of different ones to get the job done.
Yeah.
Right? Like they might even have more types of pesticides on organic foods, just different, but that's not even meant. Oh my God. Because this is coming into it. I was like, I know that's a thing. I still knew it was at an insignificant level. I had no clue to how insignificant of a level. And I had zero clue of what they even based that list off of. It's not even how much is on these products. It's just, that's not even taken into account.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is going to come up again today, but you have to have a dosage in order to say something is toxic, poisonous, poses some threat to your health. You have to know at what point it starts to do that. And that is why we have these concentrations. That's why there are established tolerance levels that are evaluated every single damn year. Every single year. It's not that this level was just established and it stayed forever. No, because things change. Our environment changes. Farming practices change, and we have to account for that. But the Environmental Working Group does not feel the need to account for that. It is one of the biggest scams that is still so popular and people live and die by it. I saw a girl make a TikTok. She was talking about what the Environmental Protection Agency does,
but
saying it was the Environmental Working Group, saying that every year, the Environmental Working Group tests these concentrations and makes this list. And a lot of people will do that. a lot of people will say that they don't do any testing. The testing is there for them. They could make this list and it would be relevant for no one because all of these crops are safe to consume. But if they wanted to for fun, just rank them by concentration. Yeah, they could because that data is available.
But they don't because that's not going to grab you.
But they don't use it.
What the
heck? But they don't use it. Yeah.
Wow.
Someone could take a sip of just one single sip of 3 sodas every single day, and a person could drink 2 full sodas every day. But what counts is how many sodas that person bought. Say they bought them. That's what counts. Or how many they have in their presence. Because this person has 3 that then they
it makes complete sense if you just refuse to think about it at all. That's what it is. Yeah. It makes sense only if you refuse to think about it. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And not only that, because I know that was a big piece too, is like it's not just a scam because of what it is in the grocery store. It is significantly more expensive. And I think the problem here is it's marketed, like you said, through influencers, through whatever, as not just that this is a little bit better of an option, which really it's not, but that the other option is dangerous to your health.
Yeah.
These are potentially dangerous to your health. Where I know we talked about how much it is, where I think, what was it? The average family of 4, I remember I brought these numbers up, pays about $932 a month on groceries. And this is from Consumer Reports a couple years ago. And I know grocery prices have elevated by a lot. So this is probably not the most up to date, but just as an example, say $932 a month on groceries. And the organic versions of foods on average are 47% more expensive than their non-organic counterparts. Meaning if that same family of 4, wanted to eat organic to improve their health or to avoid these made up dangers, their monthly bill just went from just over $900 to over $1,400. That's over $5,000 extra dollars per year for nothing. For nothing. And people will market the heck out of this. Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And there are some people, I don't know, some people can be allergic to certain pesticides. That is possible. And so that's the time where I'm like, yeah, like don't, like maybe, but even still, like then you have to just be generally, if you do have an actual allergy, it would still be advised to stay away from certain organic crops because they include pesticides. You'd have to make sure you knew which pesticide you were allergic to. It's not like people are just allergic to every single one and to what degree, but there's people that will say I have pesticide intolerance, and we will have people, I'm sure, I will make a clip of this, and you'll have the people who say that we are getting paid by, what's his name, Monsanto? Who's that?
Monsanto. Yeah, you're getting paid. These guys are obviously paid off. It's like, by who?
Yeah.
Like, who is putting money in my pocket to just not promote organic?
I don't think we'd be making this. I don't think we'd be recording on opposite ends of the country in my kitchen in your bedroom. I don't think that would be happening. Monsanto was paying us.
That's my absolute favorite comment. These guys are obviously paid off. By who? Please tell me.
This is free information that is readily available. Like
on Google. It's really fun.
Every single, it's not like...
You just have to do an ounce of effort past listening to the influencer that told you this in the first. That's so funny to me. But okay, so organic's huge.
Yeah, and I also think it's important to note, just on that assumption that people have, the Environmental Protection Agency is an independent group. So they're not like appointed by certain groups within the USDA. They are scientists, and oftentimes it will be either they volunteer or as like a scientist in the toxicology space, it's almost like a requirement that you have to sit on this community. They'll get randomly picked, random committee. They'll get randomly picked to do it and go do these tests. It's not like people who work for the USDA. It's an independent group of researchers and scientists.
They're not even incentivized. The people doing it aren't incentivized either, which I know that's a big one, because I know this is one of those that I think people will die on a hill for. Is what I noticed. The organic
versus the Environmental Working Group does a lot of work with organic companies. So
what?
That is something we have to consider both ends of the.
We don't want to look at that. We're going to choose to look the other way. Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay, we got to get going on these because we got 3 big ones. We got 3 big ones that we're trying to go on to now. Okay, I got to take a deep breath too, because I didn't even put the notes together for that one, and I'm getting up now. We're going into number 3. Top 3. And I think honestly, top 4, they're all kind of combined together, but top 3. Now, we talked about this topic on the Ask Me Anything on the premium side a couple weeks ago. I remember because it was a hot topic, and it's been especially hot this year. And it's something I am a little bit more passionate about because I have one on my arm right now. Continuous glucose monitors for use on non-diabetics. So these CGMs, if you ever see someone with like a little sticker on the back of their arm and there's a little thing in there, it's a needle, and it kind of shows you your blood glucose levels through the day every 5 minutes, recording to your phone. It's a cool little device, but it's now, and these were made for diabetics, type 1, type 2, and sometimes pre-diabetics. But now companies are starting popping up, like NutriSense is, I know, a big one. They actually reached out to work to me, and I said, and actually this is the funny one, because at first I'm like, well, dang, this is a scam, but I'm like, I could also save a lot of money on health insurance if they sent me. So I was like, I'm actually a diabetic. They're like, oh, actually, we can't work with diabetics because their product isn't up to standard for actually, that's just another story. But what a continuous glucose monitor is, and you might have seen people do this on social media, wherever they point to like a graph and it goes like up and down, and they say like, this spikes your insulin and spikes your glucose. This is usually what they're referring to as data from one of these. Now, a continuous glucose monitor works through a tiny sensor inserted under the skin on either your belly or back of arms, is usually where you see them today. And this sensor measures your internal glucose level or your blood sugar, right? What they test at the doctor with a finger prick if you ever go in for like your yearly exam, right? So this is just found the glucose between the fluid between these cells. Now, the sensor tests glucose every few minutes, and the transmitter just wirelessly sends this information to either a monitor or a cell phone, which if you're a diabetic is a huge pro, because instead of having to prick your finger anywhere from 6 to 12 times per day to find that reading, and you only get that highlight of what is my blood glucose right now, you get a continuous line to see where it's trending. If it's going up, it's going down. It's super, super helpful. And here's why it's turning into a scam, right? And I think this is just what the narrative is as of the last 5 to 10 years. And that is that there is a new public enemy in fitness, like there is every few years. It just recycles through new one. The public enemy, his name is insulin. You might have seen this on social media a lot. Now, insulin, and I wanted to break this down in detail just to quickly run through. I don't think it's going to be a long one, but insulin is a hormone, because I think a lot more people need to not be afraid of this, right? But a hormone just means it's produced by a gland in one of our body parts to really affect the functions of other organs and tissues throughout the body, right? Hormones are essentially like little chemical messengers in our body, just essentially sending a text or communication to let them know, hey, we got to do something over here. Now, insulin's job is pretty important, right? And this is important because if you don't have insulin, you would die, right? If I didn't have synthetic insulin to give myself, you wouldn't be hearing my voice right now, right? We'd be dead. So when you eat food, it's broken down into nutrients, right? Protein into amino acids, dietary fats into fatty acids, and carbohydrates down into glucose, right? That's how a basic level of how things work, right? That goes into the bloodstream. From there, the nutrients need somewhere to go, right? They can't just stay in your bloodstream. And they're moved from the blood into muscle and fat cells for storage, right? This is a very basic rundown, but just to give you guys an idea. That's where insulin comes in, right? It essentially just acts as a key, telling these cells to open up their doors, allowing the nutrients to be shuttled in, right? So if you don't have insulin, it would just stay in the bloodstream. For example, if I have a meal and my blood sugar or blood glucose rises, and I don't have insulin because I'm a type 1, and I'll go over that here in a second, my body can't produce it. All those nutrients, they'll just stay in the blood, and they can't get to the body parts where they're needed, which is important, right? So whenever you eat food, your pancreas releases insulin into the blood. As the nutrients are slowly absorbed into your cells, insulin levels drop until finally all the nutrients are absorbed and insulin levels are back down to baseline. That's what insulin does. And it does a lot of good things too. So here's the question after learning that is, why is it the bad guy, right? Why is it the bad guy? And it's because people, I want to name drop, but I think we're going to name drop him later in the episode, so I'm not, right? People will use scary terms that people don't fully understand to make something seem like a bigger problem than it is. Because here's a fact about insulin. When insulin levels are high after a meal, it inhibits the breakdown of fat or fat burning because it's stimulating the creation of body fat. It's storing body fat. So just because of that, it inhibits fat burning. So if you don't think about this logically, therefore insulin inhibits fat burning and it's bad. That's the conclusion you arrive to, right? But you don't take into account, because this is where all these blood glucose monitors come in, is the lower you can keep your insulin, the lower you can keep your blood sugar throughout the day, the more fat you'll burn is the marketing sell. And we've covered this just so many times, right? Yes, insulin triggers fat storage, but it does not make you fat. Insulin causes fat cells to absorb fatty acids and glucose and then expand, but that's not what causes you to get fat over time. Overeating, over consuming calories. That is the one thing that causes fat gain. Doesn't matter if it's high carb, low carb, if your insulin levels are sky high or through the freaking ground, right? Not a bad thing. The pros of insulin that no one talks about too, it suppresses your appetite. It helps in muscle building. You would literally die without it. This is an important hormone that I don't think people realize. That heats me up, yo. And people are selling this as if you want to lose fat, if you want to feel better, have more energy, you got to wear one of these so you can really see how your body responds to glucose. It kills me.
The thing that gets me too is how Tony's a type 1 diabetic, but type 2, type 1s, if their insulin production was normal, that of a healthy person, people would kill for that, right? So what these glucose monitors do is assume that something is wrong with your body that makes insulin production out of whack.
Yeah.
Pisses me off.
It's not, well, the funniest thing too is because what they'll say, it's called the dreaded insulin spike, where if you see someone and they'll eat like a Chick-fil-A sandwich with some fries in their blood
Let's
glucose.
see the effect of this banana on my blood sugar.
Oh my God. And of course it goes up and then it comes back down. And here's what I don't think people realize. They'll see that spike and then they come back down and they're like, oh, that's bad. Let me tell you right here. Let's think about this logically. If your body spikes and comes back down, that is the best news you could receive, because that means that your pancreas, your hormones, they are working exactly how they should. They're working perfectly healthy. That is the perfect healthy response that you want to see when you eat that food. If it didn't look like that, that would be a bigger problem. But this is what people are touting to it, right? They're essentially simplifying the health of a food down to one metric, and that is whether or not it spikes blood sugar. This is the freaking, have you seen Blood Sugar King? He's the guy
who's the guy that literally holds out a banana or hold out apple
that's
cider
him.
vinegar?
Kind of looks like Ken,
pizza.
but with gray hair, like Barbie Ken, but with gray hair.
I know who he is. There's also a newer one. And he literally does the same intro every single time. Let's see the effect of this banana on my blood sugar.
Yeah.
Let's compare this banana to a pizza.
And that's all it's doing, is it's trying to do this, where let's take this into account. If you're just saying food is good or bad for you based on this one metric, whether or not it sharply rises your blood sugar, which again, that's not the important number. How it comes down is the important number. That would mean a banana with some berries, right? Which are going to be rich in prebiotic fiber, magnesium, potassium, vitamins A, B, C, K, all these vitamins and minerals would be worse for you than a bowl of Kentucky Fried Chicken, because that is mostly fat, which is going to slow it down, and protein, which is not going to have nearly a high of a spike as a bowl of fruit, right? So people like this will start incentivizing super fatty, super fibery, these foods that are just low carb, because they are assuming that this means it's bad, right? And I think that's the biggest piece you got to understand for it. Just because a food spikes blood sugar, that's not a bad thing. That is a great thing if your body responds to it like that. And I think this is the other thing, is people are like, well, what if you're non-diabetic, but you want to prevent diabetes? All you need to know, the important metrics that you would need to know to see diabetes coming, because type 1 and type 2, type 1 is genetic, right? It's 100% genetic, but I think it's about 10% of Americans have diabetes, like 1 in 10. It's actually a pretty high freaking number, but people don't realize only 5% of diabetes cases are type 1. 95% of diabetics are type 2 diabetics, which does come down to genetics, but also more controlled through lifestyle, right? Where your body still makes insulin, but it just either is less insulin or your body cells become resistant to it. But there's two other things that you can test for this. One, prick your finger when you wake up once a year, and you can see your fasting blood glucose. That is going to be just as good of a sign as wearing a needle in your arm 24/7 from a $400 a month device that's going to read and make you obsessed over foods. That, or getting a simple fasted blood test to check your fasted insulin and HbA1c, which is your 3-month average. That will tell you 10 times more than this, and it will cost a fraction of the price, like less than 1% of the price of spending $399 a month with a needle in your arm. It's just a scam. People realize it's another market. It's a $6.3 billion market now for non-diabetics. It's the same story. Paint a new enemy, aka insulin, right? Using weak and very not thought through science, and then sell it to people as the secret to why they haven't been able to lose weight or why they can't feel good. You've been struggling all this time. It's not that you haven't been consistent with training and just eating well. It's because of insulin. And this is going to solve that for you. That's it. That's it. My mouth is dry and I got a cough in my throat because I just went off. This is what I'm saying. I try to control. I'm out of control. I got to take a deep breath.
Listen, that's how I feel sometimes. People on my TikTok videos are like, why are you yelling at me? I'm like, because this is frustrating and I can't hide it.
That's what I'm saying. We're going to need to take some deep breaths in between these because I'm like, just.
When was I just feeling like this the other day? Oh, berberine supplements are the new trendy thing that are called Nature's Ozempic. And they're actually can have been shown to be really helpful for those with type 2 diabetes. Is it type 2 diabetes?
Type 2, yeah, with blood glucose response, yeah.
Yeah, and they have been shown to actually be effective there. Again, this is not me. I don't know what medication you're on, but it totally depends on what you're doing. But they have clinically been shown to be a supplement that can help with those with type 2 diabetes, help bring your blood sugar down. That's awesome. That's great. But all of a sudden, it's now Nature's Ozempic, and it's
I did see that as the rebrand.
causing everyone to, it's this new weight loss thing. And there's this, oh my God, the girl that keeps going viral, this super thin, very thin, and taking berberine for her weight loss for her wedding, which is already just make your own assumptions, whatever you want to about that. But she's talking about how people are talking about how they're getting so dizzy, so lightheaded. They feel so nauseous. They have no appetite because it is lowering your blood sugar when now to levels that can
which if you're not diabetic, dangerous. You don't want low blood sugar. Like you feel like speaking from experience, I'll hit like a low blood sugar a few times per week, and that's why I have to keep little candies around the house to bring them up. I got 5 pounds of peach rings on Amazon. That's a hack. Low blood sugar sucks. Like you are not going, and it's not a good thing either. It's not like it's helping you burn fat better. You start to feel dizzy, sweat. You can't think straight. It does not feel good to be low, but it's helpful for type 2 diabetics who have a hard time lowering their blood sugar from elevated levels. So if you're not starting elevated, which if you're not diabetic, you aren't, all that's going to do is drop it low and make you hypoglycemic. It's terrible.
It's very concerning. And maybe that will make you have no appetite. You don't feel good. You eat a little bit less, but at what cost and how long does that last?
I forgot that I didn't realize that was Nature's Ozempic. I didn't realize that's what people were calling it.
Yeah. It's something else, right? There'll be something new next month. Anyway, let's talk about greens powders, which will never go out of style.
I was like, I got to cool off.
Multivitamins, greens powders is number 2.
Number 2, greens powders, like athletic greens?
Like athletic greens, like Bloom supplements, things that are marketed as a powdered multivitamin form. This is going to give you everything you need and then some. So
that can't be true. Andrew Huberman
had
told me
to make the list. Had to make the list. Had to be separate from our gut health point in the last episode because there is always going to be a new trendy greens powder, and they all do very similar things, and they are such a scam. Some companies have better intentions than others. Some may be higher quality than others. It's besides the point, but let's get into it. So it's still a supplement. A greens powder, at the end of the day, is a supplement. It is so illogical to take a powdered supplement without any evidence of a deficiency. If that is what you're taking it as, this cover all your bases, do you know where you're low, where you're lacking from a nutritional standpoint? Have you made any efforts to increase those foods in your diet? Because you're also getting the fiber, you're also getting additional micronutrients from those other foods. You're also having a more nutrient dense meal. Have you thought about trying that yet? Or have you thought about taking an isolated vitamin, a much higher concentrated form from a source that is third-party tested, better absorbed because it's in capsule form, it's not in a powder? Have you thought about all these things? Probably not. As a whole, Americans do not get enough fruits and veggies. These supplements are not marketed to the people that actually could benefit from them. Exhibit A being, however, $79 a month for athletic greens.
Oh, the price.
They are marketed to people who are already healthy, marketed to already healthy people, taking the greens powder on top of their salad that they're having for lunch, on top of their salmon with vegetables and sweet potatoes at dinner. It is crazy to me. We still don't know how completely helpful a multivitamin in any form is, whether it's in a powdered form, whether it's in a capsule. Large-scale randomized controlled trials show minimal or no benefit to taking general multivitamins for the majority of the population. Okay, this was a review, and it was of how many people? I think it was like over 4,000 people, multivitamin users and non-multivitamin users, and this included powdered form and capsule form. They didn't separate it by a different type, but it's important to note that they did use the powdered form in there.
Mm-hmm.
And their objective was to compare self-reported and clinically measurable health outcomes among multivitamin users and non-users, so to look at the difference from a health standpoint. And there were no differences between those who took a multivitamin and those who didn't in a history of 10 different chronic diseases, number of present health conditions, severity of current psychological distress, and rates of needing help with daily activities. These multivitamin users, however, reported better overall health despite no apparent differences in their health outcomes. They thought they were healthier. They were not healthier than those who did not take a multivitamin.
What do we call that? Is that something called placebo? Is that what that's called?
That is something called the placebo effect. And again, thinking about a supplement where they can be so helpful, especially is for filling in those gaps for people who are deficient. They struggle to get something in their diet. They know exactly what it is that they're trying to replenish in their body. Mm-hmm. If you're talking about multivitamin, typically the concentrations of each nutrient in there is going to be lower than you would get in a isolated form.
Yeah.
A powdered source is not as bioavailable as food or even a capsule form. And a lot of these contain proprietary blends, these powders. So these are collections of ingredients which are unique to the company. So the amount of each ingredient in a proprietary blend are not required to be listed on their supplement fact or nutrition label. So they're essentially a company secret. You have to label the amount of the proprietary blend as a whole, but not each individual ingredient. Looking at Athletic Greens, their ingredients are listed under 3 different proprietary blends. This doesn't tell you how much of each ingredient is used and why really, I hate this for a variety of reasons, but also many companies associate health benefits with specific ingredients. How could you do that without showcasing how much of each ingredient is there? Athletic Greens, for example. From their website, AG1 contains powerful plant extracts, adaptogenic herbs, and antioxidants to help your metabolism, energy, and ability to adapt to stress. Are you getting the amounts used in clinical studies that showed potential benefits? No. How can we know? Or did the company just include an insignificant amount, enough to include it on the label, but not enough to give it any benefit? We won't know. With 75 ingredients in a 12-gram serving,
you're not getting
there is likely not a clinically significant amount of any ingredient.
Nothing.
Of Athletic Greens.
That's what I was looking up before this, because that's the perfect thing is like, oh, doesn't it cover my bases? That would be the intention, right? Is if you're deficient, that's what we always preach is like, how do you know what supplements to take? It's like, it's different for everybody. Figure out what bridges need to be built in your nutrition and then build those bridges, right? For example, like, I know we don't shut up about magnesium, but like a magnesium supplement where over 50% of Americans do not hit the RDA of magnesium, fall significantly short of that. Athletic Greens has 26 milligrams. That is about 5% of the RDA. So it's like if you're taking Athletic Greens and you're deficient in magnesium, that's not going to solve the problem. And that's likely with all these other ingredients. Like you said, 72 ingredients in just one little serving. You can't fit a lot in there. Right? It's not playing tricks on your brain. It's not a new science that shrinks into different sizes. You can't fit that in there.
Yeah. Magnesium, calcium, copper, chromium, selenium in Athletic Greens powder are all well under the recommended daily value, and iron is completely absent. So like, just keep that in mind. There's claims for energy boosting, and yes, it contains several B vitamins, which at a cellular level help with energy production. That's their role in the body. Doesn't mean you'll feel any increase in energy unless you are deficient to begin with. If that's something you need, it's going to be much more economical to just get a supplement with the B vitamins you and your doctor think you need. Okay, there's also claims for recovery and immunity. It contains no protein, which again, this is not marketed for protein, but what is one of the best supplements for muscle recovery? Protein powder. One of the very few well researched and well studied protein powder. Okay. It doesn't contain vitamin D, which is essential for immune support. So there's just so much not included with all of these claims. Improves digestion. Yeah, there's some probiotics in athletic greens, but just because it has some listed doesn't mean they're actually alive at the point of consumption, especially in a powdered form. That is probably one of the worst forms that you could take a probiotic in. It's not going to be alive at the point it reaches your small intestine. It contains 2 grams of fiber, which is one of the most well-documented nutrients to help with overall gut health, help with digestion, help move food through your digestive system, help regulate your blood sugar. 2 grams?
Completely insignificant.
So it's just, yes, Andrew Huberman advertises it on his podcast. Yes, a lot of influencers drink it in their What I Eat in a Day. That should not be your basis for whether or not you should be taking something.
Yeah.
At all.
Well, that's the biggest thing that gets me is the dose in everything. Because that's what it's like. People will assume like, oh my God, you guys are saying athletic greens is bad for you. No, it's not. It's just, It's insignificant to your health. The odds are it's insignificant to your health to where, like we just talked about with all these vitamins and minerals, like for magnesium, again, supplement with hundreds of milligrams of magnesium if you have a deficiency there to fix the problem. But this whole sprinkle a little bit of everything in there. And that's how you can do it in supplements, right? That's why a lot of quote unquote fat burners, or how Celsius gets away with saying, what does it say on there? It's a thermogenic, it burns fat. If you have any amount of caffeine in your supplement, caffeine technically increases the amount of fat you are oxidizing for like 1 to 2 hours to a very insignificant amount. It still does, but to an insignificant amount. But if you have any caffeine in your product, boom, you can put fat burner or burns fat, incinerates fat, whatever you want on the label. And that's what they do here with, it seems like all their, like the energy boosting, the recovery. It's like, let's just put a little where, you know, if you have a big dose, it'll make a difference, but we don't have to mention that. And that's,
and it really bothers me because that, especially for a company that claims to be, you know, evidence-based, there's no trials looking at the effectiveness of athletic greens or any supplement company for the most part, for that matter.
Nope.
And there's extremely limited research with greens powders supplementation in general, period. Supplements are not required to be proven to be effective in order to go on the market and be sold. Remember that. I feel like people forget that. They do not have to prove to be effective for what they are stating they are doing at all. And what there's studies looking at the benefits of fruits and vegetables. So many of them. And looking at the benefits of a diet rich in fruits and vegetables based off of fulfilling your needs for certain vitamins and minerals. And that is what especially greens powders and multivitamins do, is they take from those studies, dietary studies, not the same as a supplement, and compare that and put that in their marketing on their website and use those claims.
You can't take a study from real food and say the supplement does the same thing. You cannot do that. That's not how it works. If you want to run another study and look at what a supplement of that form does, go for it. But that hasn't been translated yet. And that's the whole thing. It's like everyone that says this is such a scientific company, Huberman promotes them. It's like, this is another perfect picture of a great marketing company. And this is what Mike Matthews pointed me out to, which I freaking loved, is you can go to webarchive.org, which is cool. And you can see the history of every version of a website in existence. Go back a few years on athletic greens, because we know now, and this is this is why you don't see anyone market this anymore, because it has been so disproven. They used to market this as you get your 8 or 9 servings of fruits and vegetables by taking this one scoop of powder. That's what they would market, until all the science came out saying, no, you don't. Like, it does not replace real food, period. You cannot say that. This was all over their website until they got called out for it, and then they had to change it. You go back a few years and it says that literally in their marketing. It's like, what are the benefits? Get your 9 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. Same exact product. Nothing's changed. Same product. They just realize, oh, we got to market different if we want to keep selling. And again, to our point, like Huberman, probably one of the busiest men in America, great neuroscientist, very smart, well-articulated man, very smart guy. Does he have the time to go put all this effort into the nutrition side of things when a company is offering him they're reaching deep into their pockets and saying, hey, we'd love to spend time on your show. And it's like, this isn't a bad product for you. It's vitamins, it's minerals.
No,
It can't be
it's
bad.
not bad for you.
It's not like he's diving deep into like, is this the most ethical sponsor that I could have on my show? He just probably doesn't have time. His background's not nutrition. It's not. So that's why I think people are like, well, wait a sec. Huberman said so it has to be a fact.
If I wanted to make money, make the most money I could right now, I would make a greens powder. I would make a green supplement, and I would reach out to every single influencer in the fitness space that I know, and I would market it to younger women as at a point of this can, one, make sure that you're getting all of your nutrients. It's going to help with your gut health, and maybe throw in that maybe it's going to help with your skin and your hair health, and overall you're going to feel more energized and just better.
Like, who doesn't want
I'd
that?
make so much money and it'd be so easy to start because no one's going to tell me that I can't do that.
Yeah. And just be worried. Like, the same thing with the women's supplements, like marketed just to women. It's like, be weary of a supplement that claims to do everything under the sun. Who would not want more energy, less bloating, better digestion and gut health, getting your fruits? Like, who wouldn't want all of those positive things? They go in so many different directions. Everyone wants that. Be a little, I'm not saying that defines if something's good or bad, but be suspicious. Little red flag pops up if it's claiming to do all this. And like you said, it's like if you live in a low income area or in poverty, yeah, a greens powder might be beneficial because it helps you get some of these things. This is not who is buying greens powders. It's people in poverty. When you said $79, I was like, holy crap, the price went down. It used to be like $90 to $100 a month.
Oh, really? And is it small? Is it less?
Yeah, look at that. It's a freaking deal. It's a freaking deal. But that's the whole point of why this is a scam. We're not saying it's bad for you. We're saying they're just manipulating their marketing to make a profit. That's what it's doing. And they know all of this. This is very available and present research and data. It's out there.
Yeah. So I guess that can wrap that one up before we end the doozy.
So. Okay. Now this one, and now we made our way down to number 1. 10 down to 1, right? I think we've had some good ones today. I've got a new favorite for sure. And this one, I want to preface this by saying we're going to go into it a little bit, but we actually have been planning when Marianna is back in Los Angeles to do more in-person episodes. We actually have a full episode being dedicated to this because we want to do a really foolproof, bulletproof version of explaining why this is a scam, right? This is not a smear campaign. This is not anything, but it deserves, I think, outright the number 1 spot on our list. And I think you agree with me quite a bit on there. And that is someone that goes by the name of Paul Saladino, or Carnivore MD. You might be familiar with him. If not, if you've ever had a shirtless guy in the grocery store pop up telling you what foods not to eat because it'll kill you and cause cancer and all these other bad things, it's probably him, right? It's probably him. And I want to do this because here's one thing I was thinking of is when you're changing someone's mind, right? And I don't think any person, anything is all good or all bad, right? Most of these things on the list, you could find a sliver of anything in there. Paul does highlight a few important things. He does point out asymmetries in our healthcare system. The fact that it incentivizes waiting until there's a problem instead of taking action before there's a problem. He points out, and this is the ironic part, that doctors don't learn enough about nutrition in schooling. I thought that was ironic, but he does a good job highlighting that. He promotes searching for a root cause of an illness and preventative care, which I don't think is discounted because there are positive things. I think that's what draws certain people in and then allows him to spew the nonsense of what he's about to into doing that, right? I think that kind of hooks some people and saying, oh, he's making some really good points. And then he just unleashes these floodgates. And he's got an MD after his name, so that's got to mean something. What's his MD in? What's his schooling background in?
Psychiatry. He's board certified in psychiatry, which is not, I don't want that to denounce psychiatrists at all. Like
No.
you go through the full medical school, but again, that has nothing to do with nutrition. Unfortunately, it should be a really routine part of all medical school programs to learn more about nutrition. It's not. Incredible to go get that medical doctor licensure. That's huge, but psychiatry. And then he went on to get certified as a functional medicine practitioner. So I also don't want to, there are great providers and really bad providers in any area of healthcare. That is there in any profession, there's good and bad. I have seen a functional medicine doctor myself had a really good experience, wasn't fit my need then, but I've also had a really bad doctors both ways. The functional medicine profession has a lot more of that you will see of claims extrapolating data based off of a lot of animal studies. You'll see that a lot more often, and they integrate a lot of different types of medicine, which I think is great. And there's good and bad. So I didn't want to highlight that piece
big time. Yeah, a psychiatrist
being bad.
Super important, right? A psychiatrist, they are an MD. They specialize in mental health, including substance use and disorders. Massively important part of the society. The highlight there is just that maybe you should listen to a psychiatrist when it comes to mental health advice and tackling and problem solving. But when it comes to creating a diet and making claims towards cancer causing toxic foods, what you should make up as a whole diet, the MD here, in my opinion, I think yours too, does not qualify someone to speak about that in this scenario.
Yeah.
Right. And the same thing too, even in med school, which is, again, a very challenging, I think this is to the point of why we think it's a scam. He's not an idiot. He's a very smart, you cannot be an idiot and make it through med school. You can't. You have to be smart. So that's what adds this extra layer of that means this is intentional. The things he does is intentional, because even in med school, I think the average total contact hours of nutrition instruction is around 16 to 24 total hours to get there. Again, not saying there's not good or not bad, but that MD behind the name doesn't, especially when it's board certified psychiatrist, shouldn't be counted as a credential that says this makes what he says about everything under the sun.
Yeah.
Facts.
He also knows how to read research. He do a lot of research.
And I think that's
knows how to read it, knows how to interpret it, and knows how to interpret it in a way that is very misleading.
How many quacks are there on social media who misinterpret research? Hundreds, infinite. But why are we picking him? Is because he knows how to read research. And we talk about this all the time. It is hard to read research. It is like learning a new language. You can't go through med school without a deeper than most of the population understanding of how to do that. Yeah. And this is the big one. We're going to cover a couple pieces, but again, not go crazy far into this. If you've seen him, he got famous, I think, on Joe Rogan for this claim, right? The first one. Vegetables don't want to be eaten. They're toxic. They're toxic. Promoting you should not be eating vegetables. And that shocked the world. They're like, what does he mean? Is he serious? Because no one's ever said that before, I think, in the history of humankind. I don't think anyone's ever said that, right? So that's where it all started.
Yeah. Whew. So he has made this claim everywhere that plants contain their phytoalexins or phytotoxins. Plant toxins is what we'll go with. And these are defense chemicals produced by the plant. And therefore, they shouldn't be eaten because these chemicals are toxic and they're causing more harm. They're causing disease. Okay, so that's largely his basis if he explains it. I will catch him explaining a bit more on podcasts. Sometimes it's just in my face on my For You page. Spinach is toxic and it's killing you.
That's the big videos. He took it out of a woman. I mean, it was an overweight woman shopping and she had fruits and vegetables and spinach in her cart, and he has his shirt off and he takes it out of her cart and he says, "Are you serious? Are you seriously considering eating this?" And it's spinach. And talks this woman out of eating spinach. Someone who's struggling with their weight.
Can I give you a funny side note? Yes. I stitched that video. It got taken down. That's when I was temporarily blocked by Carnivore MD. I'm not anymore for whatever reason. Him taking that out of her hands in a grocery store, I stitched it. I said, if anyone came up to me while I'm minding my damn business, buying my fucking food, especially if I'm trying... Who buys spinach and puts it in their fridge just to throw it out and buy a new one next week? Like, sometimes we don't want to buy these foods and we do it because we're trying to be healthier. Okay. Yep. If someone does that, my fist is in his face. I don't care. I am quite literally going to probably have to get dragged out of that grocery store. I would be furious.
I'm putting it on World Star too. I got the camera.
I would end up hurting myself. I would get hurt. I can't throw hands, but I would get hurt. And I was talking about that. That got taken down. I also made a video about, and this kind of, it's a character thing, right? He does these things with such a strong belief.
Yeah.
You cannot go out and put yourself in such a position where you know you're going to get a lot of hate for. You can't do, you don't put yourself on the internet being really bold and contrasting a lot of views thinking you're not going to get hate. No, you know what you're doing. And it bothers me. But anyway, going back to these, I don't want to get too off topic because I can. But yes, so plants have natural toxins that they produce. You cannot determine an optimal diet based off of which plants produce defense chemicals. Why is that? Okay. Because that's like, then we can go and say, if these are, because they produce toxins, we should not eat them, they cause disease. That is discounting the fact that all mammals, all animals are different in their biological makeup and how they can metabolize foods. If you are making this claim, then you can also make the same claim that the same food diet, best diet is going to apply to all animals because we're disregarding our biological makeup when we're making this claim. If you think about dogs, if you think about a dog's diet, there are certain fruits like grapes that are toxic to dogs if they have one and they get sick and they can die. A human can eat the grapes. We are able to metabolize them without getting sick. But dogs are not equipped with the system to be able to properly metabolize these grapes. It's also why certain mammals are able to eat a lot of raw meat and not see any distress in their GI system because they can digest it, right? There are so many factors that go into why something may cause harm to our health. And just thinking about one isolated incident of something producing toxins could apply to all foods. So certain parts of meat compounds can also be toxic. But we're going to ignore that. We're going to completely ignore that. Some compounds in meat have been found to be carcinogenic. Does that mean that you should avoid it altogether? No, not at all. But based off of Paul's logic, you should, if the same thing applied to meat. But he only applies his specific logic when it fits his bias. And that pisses me off. Sorry. But that claim just makes no sense at all. Sense.
It's very hypocritical, but again, and this is why like the scam piece is behind it. It's like he feeds into his own bias for what he's selling, what he's promoting, his diet, his supplements, everything there, because he's an owner of a supplement company. You have to remember that too. Yeah. But he does that, and it's the same exact thing where he's got an MD behind his name. He's in decent shape. He makes one or two good points about something else. People don't understand. If you told me I could not define an oxalate. I could not define some of the bigger words he uses. And that's what a lot of people do. And I don't even know if he knows how to define some of the big words he uses, but people will use big words. Oh,
he loves using the big words.
But that's a technique where if you use bigger words that people associate with good or bad, like again, toxin or toxic, immediately people say bad. Or pesticide, like we talked about earlier, immediately people label bad. So if you can get someone to label something as bad without even knowing what it is, that's how it gets people hooked, is they don't know how to attribute that to meat. They don't know how to attribute it to anything else because they don't even know what it is in the first place. They just believe you because you've built that trust through having an MD behind your name. Is it a relevant MD? Not at all. But that's the whole point where I think people will do it and they don't realize this massive bias he's ignoring.
Yeah. And the thing with toxins, if you look at, yes, plants can produce toxins. That is true. But taking that, how does that translate into human beings? Why can a diet rich in fruits and vegetables reduce all-cause mortality then? Reduce your risk for type 2 diabetes, reduce your risk for cancer. Just because these produce these toxins does not automatically mean that they are toxic to humans and causing disease.
Yeah.
The research actually shows opposite of a diet rich in fruits and vegetables.
That's exactly what it is. If you can find any human data supporting anything that comes out of this man's mouth, please send it to us because we would love to see it. But that's where these claims will come from. Let's, again, look at all the human research. It's like, why then in people eating fruits, eating vegetables, why do you see all these negative health outcomes start to disappear and go down if they're poisonous, they have these toxins in them? And that's why it's important to understand just because something is labeled as a toxin doesn't mean you can't have it in your diet. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing, right? The poison is in the dose when it comes to everything. You can overdose on vitamins and minerals. You can overdose on
Yeah.
water. It can be deadly, right? It can be deadly to a point, but you don't see people going away afraid to take a sip of water because it could kill you if you have too much. Same thing here, but it's just labeled with a different name that scares people.
Yeah. And a specific example I really wanted to give to analyze this just a little bit deeper that I see he's been spewing often. You'll see him say kale is bullshit, or stop eating spinach is killing you.
Yeah.
He will say spinach is high in oxalates, it's high in isocyanates, and he'll throw out these words that people don't know. So let's talk about oxalates, because I've actually seen a few viral videos of his recently, and let's understand them a bit more. He'll also say that they cause kidney stones, which is a really common claim that he's been making since he started. So oxalic acid is an organic compound found in many plants, leafy greens, vegetables, fruits, even cocoa, nuts, and seeds. Our body can produce oxalate on its own or obtain it from food. Our body does produce it on its own. So regardless of if you don't have it in your diet, you're still going to have oxalate in your body. So scary. Sorry, your body's producing it. You can't tell it to not. And it can bind to calcium, and it can prevent it from being absorbed at a specific meal, but to a very small degree. So that'll be one claim, is that this oxalate can bind to calcium. It can cause nutrient deficiencies. This is only at the specific meal, so it wouldn't be at consecutive meals. And it is small. It is not to a degree that can put you at risk of a deficiency if you are eating a balanced diet. So if you're only eating spinach all the time with calcium-rich foods and that's all you're having, then yeah, maybe we would be worried. But that's the importance of generally a varied diet for so many reasons. But if you are having some sort of calcium source without spinach after, okay, this is not going to affect the calcium absorption there. And again, the effect it does have is minimal. It is not strong, and it's not enough to put you into a deficient state, unless if you have a disease that really affects calcium absorption, then maybe we would be more cognizant of our calcium consumption. But recommendations aren't typically to avoid oxalates. It's to increase your calcium, if that says anything. Let's talk about kidney stones. So our body, like I said, produces majority of the oxalates that forms kidney stones. So the kidney stones that you see, the oxalate kind, I forget what they're called, but they have the word oxalate. They're the most common form of kidney stones. And the majority of that oxalate, the oxalate crystals, are found from what is produced in your body, not from the diet. So that's funny. A large review of multiple cohort studies showed that dietary oxalate intake is similar in those who form kidney stones and those who do not. And also concluded that dietary oxalate is not a major risk factor for kidney stones. Meta-analyses of 50 controlled and observational studies of over 1 million people showed the strongest risk factors for stones included high BMI, dietary sodium, and meat and animal protein intake. That's funny. What could be protective of kidney stones? This meta-analysis of over 1 million people found vegetables, fruits, dietary fiber, calcium, and potassium.
No, but we don't care.
And we're going to link these studies in the show notes. You can go ahead and read them. But it's just funny, right? And neither Tony and I are going to go here and say, don't eat meat because it's going to give you kidney stones. No, we're not going to say that. because if you
we know how to interpret things. And that's like the biggest piece is you can highlight. And here's the thing about when you are well-spoken, when you are educated, and when you are smart like him, is when, especially in a subject that you're more well-versed in and you spend a lot of time in compared to the average population who spends probably less than 1% learning about this kind of stuff than he does. You're allowed, when you tell stories, and you know this when you're telling a story, you can leave out details to make a story seem different than reality, right? You do that to your friends, your husband, your wife. You might leave out some details. You can tell a story and leave out details to make the story seem different than it actually was. And that's exactly what he's doing here. Is he'll draw out and point to very specific correlations and then leave out the actual important parts that would say, oh, well, what you're saying is irrelevant because of X, Y, and Z. He doesn't look at those parts. He leaves those out. And that's a problem And that's a problem. And I think another layer, it's like people trust him because of the MD, because of this, because he's a PubMeder, right? He'll screenshot and put PubMed IDs on his videos. He'll publish studies, which again are hard to read. The average person can't read a study and actually get anything valuable from that. That's what he does. Is he'll put it on the screen, where that's my favorite thing to do. And what I did putting these together in the notes is actually reading through the research that he'll put on the screen when making these certain claims. Did you do that with any of his other stuff? Yeah. Did you get to dive too deep into there? I mean, my favorite was the soda causing cancer issue, right? Where quoting for quote, right? There is caramel color, 4-MEI in sodas, which is known as an animal carcinogen. At least he said animal instead of just carcinogen. Known as an animal carcinogen, and is very possible to cause cancer. How are you putting this in your body? And it's found in very significant levels in soda, right? And so here's what I did is I looked up the highest levels that you could find it in soda, and that's actually Pepsi compared to anything else. Pepsi has the highest amount of this caramel color, 4-MEI, and it has about 0.75 milligrams available, right? The study he puts on the screen, when he references this, he says it, he'll put it on the screen and then flashes away. You're like, oh, wow, there's a study that says all this. It's a study done in mice where, if you look it up, they inject this into these animals' feed, right? These mice feed at levels that are about 2,500 to 5,000 parts per million daily for 2 years. And what they noticed is in the highest dosed group of mice, you didn't notice a difference in all-cause mortality. You didn't. There's no difference between the mice who didn't and the mice who did. But you did notice a small increase in seizures, hyperactivity, and actually leukemia in high-dosed female mice. Big red flag, right? It's a form of cancer, right? To extrapolate this out to humans, that is the equivalent to taking 11,500 milligrams per day of 4-MEI when the highest soda form has 0.75 milligrams in it. But that is enough. So that is around 12,000 cans of Pepsi a day to consume this much of 4-MEI. But that's what he's representing as research. But the public doesn't know. The public doesn't take time to go extrapolate this and look this out. Because if someone came up to you and said that, and you knew that, you'd be like, get this idiot out of my face. Is he actually trying to make a point that a Pepsi is going to cause cancer? Which, do we condone drinking Pepsi? No food's good and bad on its own.
No, it's just, there's no support. We're not like, yeah, let's go drink a bunch of Pepsis. Yeah. It is the claim that is misleading and also can be very, very, very worrisome for the people who do drink a Pepsi here and there. Yeah. It can instill a lot of fear where it may be unnecessary, right? Yeah. Is a sugar sweetened beverage high in sugar and high in calories? Yeah, it is. Can having a lot maybe affect your weight and overall health down the line if you have a lot of it? Maybe. Some people, it might not. Just like there's my grandma who smoked every single day of the week and never had a single health problem for whatever reason, right? It is not us supporting something. It's not us in support of having a lot of something. It's just these claims attached to them are not true and could be harmful to people if they think it's true. And when you look at the demographics of a lot of people that drink a lot of soda, think about a lot of this pattern that comes up with the soda and the processed food. Lower socioeconomic status, on SNAP benefits, it's served to them as schools. You know, if you're giving your kid, if you're getting some Pepsi to give to your kid because you, for whatever reason, and that's what your SNAP benefits gave you that week, that's what you're getting. It just pisses me off. It really pisses me off. Yeah. There's a lot of bigger issues.
We're going to cover more in the episode that we have time to dedicate to this, because I think it does deserve the attention, because, and this is why we're arguing before when the Liver King news broke, it's like, everyone's like, oh my God, the biggest scam artist in the industry. He's not the biggest problem. It's this guy, because people actually believe him. No one took the Liver King seriously. No one did. That people take him seriously, Paul. They take him seriously, and that's why it's a scam, number one on our list. And that's what you notice in his claims about seed oils, about artificial sweeteners, about any random food that you find him picking up in the grocery store. Oatmeal being the worst breakfast you could have.
Don't come for my oats.
You can't touch the freaking oats, right? It's the worst meal you could possibly be feeding yourself. All of these follow the same theme. It's a scare tactic. It's meant to grab people. It's using information and data that most people cannot comprehend, so they just blindly believe because it's an MD and he presented research. Wow, I got to trust this guy. That's what he does. I mean, we did a whole episode on the carnivore diet alone, which at first was just meat and just red meat. And then people realized, oh, that's actually pretty terrible for most people's health. Let's add some fruits. Oh, that's actually really not enough. It's just meat and fruits. Let's add some honey. That they keep adding things as they realize, like, oh, wait, this is still not good for most people's health. It might be like the Michaela Peterson, Jordan Peterson's daughter, who's famous about speaking about this, who has even less credibility when it comes to nutrition. But this diet saved her life, the carnivore diet, because she had the most severe autoimmune diseases I've ever heard of a person having, like debilitating injury, like as a child, where she needs hip replacements, surgeries. And this was the only diet that gave her relief. So of course, that's great for her. That's what she needed to do. Mm-hmm. That does not mean it is great for the rest of the population who is not struggling with anything close to this. That's a big problem.
He likes to pull up case studies some here and there. Have you ever caught him pulling up a case study? So like this, was her name Morgan Peterson? Is that her name?
Michaela Peterson.
Michaela. That's called a case study. That is one example. That is one human.
Yep.
One human being's experience, and they will document case studies a lot, especially when they're rare. A rare thing to happen in medicine, you want to publish it because it's never really seen often, but in the odd chance it happens again, we have it documented here that this is not the first time we're ever seeing this. Mm-hmm. And so, but he will pull up case studies of a single person, but call them, this is the evidence, this is the research. That's not research. That is documentation of a person's experience, what happened. That is like logging in your journal after a full day. It's a case. It's one human being.
Yeah. Just look at it like that. Look at the reasoning there. And you know what I realized through looking through a lot of his content too? A lot of it's based on the whole ancestral living. Our ancestors lived like this. Our ancestors did this. Why are we doing this today? And I think a lot of people for some reason attach to that idea too, where it's like, bro, our ancestors lived to be about 35 years old. They were not the peak performance of optimal health. They were doing what they needed to do to survive. Are there notes we could take? Sure. Absolutely. But should we mimic our lives to look like them? No, absolutely not. We're not, we're different than them. But that's where it's all this stuff where that's why we put them on number one on the list. And as we were going through this, why we decided to build a whole episode is because this is why we see it as so problematic. It's not another quack on social media. There's 100 of those that we could talk about that we don't want to waste our breath on because they aren't intentionally deceiving you like this. They aren't intentionally doing this. When they provide studies like him, he knows what he's doing. He knows that the studies he's providing have zero grounds to provide the claims he's making. He knows that, but he does it anyways. That's why.
Yeah. And Tony's really good about not name dropping. Like he'll keep me in check for certain things because it's true. People are people and sometimes they just don't know better and you can tell. And sometimes people have good intentions and you could tell. And sometimes it's just a waste of time. And that's the last thing we want to do is just waste our time. But this guy has a lot of effect. He has a large effect. He has a very, very large influence. And I personally feel like within a similar audience, though very, very different, but within a similar niche, if people didn't speak about this, and a lot of people do, a lot of really great people in the space talk about him often to the point that it gets tiring. I see Dr. Ids talk, like if he could have a whole page dedicated to.
I think Layne Norton does have a whole page dedicated.
Layne Norton, yeah. And it's exhausting, but you can see those people's intentions, and you want to not mislead. You want to give people a chance to have proper information that is not instilling so much fear and making nutrition and diet so black and white and giving you so many reasons to be afraid of food. And then when you get a person who goes into a children's hospital and critiques the food at a children's hospital like Carnivore MD does, knowing exactly what he is doing and making some shit apology after, there's nothing more clear as day at the attentions of someone like that. To go and critique children's hospital food. I had to bring that up because, again, there's so many people we could talk about, but the willingness to put so many people in harm's way on the internet is just so clear. And I think that video, especially for me, really solidified it. And the only reason why he gave a formal apology was because there were a lot of parents coming out who had kids that had cancer, who had kids that had passed away in a children's hospital, and shared their story. So you can have your personal opinions, you can have your personal biases, we all do, but that doesn't mean that the rest of the world should.
Exactly. And here's the thing too, it's like, I think a lot of people will blindly follow him for whatever reason. And I think we talked about this, I forget what episode it was, but that's our point too. Like, just don't blindly follow anyone, right? You should arrive to your own conclusions and your own thoughts with your own reasoning, your own logic. You should arrive there on your own. Don't blindly listen to us. Don't just take every word we say as fact, as scripture. Don't. I'm telling you not to. If we say something that piques your interest or that might teach you something new, look into that more on your own. But don't just take what we say and say, you know what, I'm just going to tuck this away as a fact and move forward. Because although I know we put good intent and good background into it, same thing. Put meaning and intent behind what you actually think instead of just blindly following people, because that's where people get stuck with guys like this and others, which there are plenty of in this industry. But that's why we added him as number 1 on the top 10 fitness scams. Congratulations, Paul. That was the only person that we put on the list. That was kind of cool. But I think that's going to put a bow on, and we're going to take our time to put together that full episode about the carnivore diet, about the conversation on seed oils, a lot more deep conversations that we did not have time for today. But that wraps up our top 10. I think number 1.
Can I just give one honorable mention?
Please do.
Flav City gets honorable mention.
Who? What was that?
Flav City. I wish we can insert something. He's the other guy that you'd see he has his protein powder company. You see him in a grocery store all the time. I would send you a video and you'll know exactly who I'm talking about.
Flav City. It's a sick name though,
and I'm
man.
sure people listening will know exactly who I'm talking about.
That's a sick name. I'll give
honorable
him that.
mention. Got to throw him out there.
Honorable mention. But that's going to wrap up our top 10 list. And of course, if you have questions about anything we covered today, shoot us a DM, shoot us a message as we go through, or even better, ask us on our AMA to expand on it, or Ask Me Anything episodes over on Premium. Again, sign up down below. It's just $5 a month. And we're doing that monthly Legion giveaway, $300 in Legion supplements every single month. We just got our first winner last, and the month of June is going for the next couple weeks. So if you're entered there, you'll be entered in our June giveaway. And we'd love to expand there. But until next time, maybe next year we'll do another top 10, see if we update it. We hope y'all have a beautiful week.